would like to do a recap.
Shit went down.
So,
yeah.
do you want me to? Or do you want
I got most of it.
Tell us about most things in a straight line.
Yeah.
Kind of in a cone. That just didn't stop.
Basically,
It stopped. It did stop.
the
eventually.
19 person set a ton of zombies on it, or turned the pub into zombies. And
Well, at least that's how it appeared.
how
to
it
us.
appeared to be zombies. And this, whilst I was hidden behind the bar, I went down into the cellar. You guys were upstairs. Stress's like that system failed, and the front door mysteriously locked. A load of zombies started heading towards them, and Caliburn casted an awesome spell, which then ended up turning a as I've written here, wall of chum / chunky salsa.
That's exactly what happened.
out of some
Can you get the dice with the different
out of zombies.
like rolled it earlier and it's like headshot and all those kind of stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Because I think it might be fun to target random parts.
Astreus shot a power of the power of a star through his arm gun, and until 3 miles of pure destruction, and kind of destroyed a shit ton of stuff. Stowbolt then went and headshot a load of zombies. And we decided the ball music was playing in the background.
That was cool, that was.
Yeah,
I
meanwhile,
did my epic.
in
In the Sheraton.
the downstairs.
Robert Smith plays on and on. Robert Smith!
Hey.
Robert the Smith, Robert the Smith.
That was Colbert segment referencing. Yes. Anyway,
I know.
I made a run for it in at the delivery hatch in the basement. Except it was suddenly like, shit, where's Terence? As in the spider. And he
Just be grateful that I didn't turn him into literal spider hands because of Terence Geezer Butler.
Wait, Terence was Robert Smith this entire time?
Maybe.
not quite. He had Robert Smith's face, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And body.
And
And stripy pyjamas.
Yeah. So he'd done a super thin web, and I ran into it, and then he was there like touching the back of my neck, and I screamed a lot. And Strayus kind of teleported down there, and everyone else found kind of their way into the
Caliban was some absolutely excellent.
yeah, Caliban was doing some badass stuff.
Parkour.
And then we end up Strayos face punched through the web, and out.
And set the web on fire.
Yeah. Oh yeah. What did I've put notes as RSSB Robert Smith
Spider butt.
Spider Bastard. I think that was short for. But I've used that quite a lot in my notes. So yeah, Robert Smith Spider Bastard. Put
We
on
said
fire.
about Spider Butt though, didn't we?
We're going
Yeah.
to Spider Butt. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
yeah, Robert Smith Spider Butt. That's probably what it was.
Spider butt.
Um,
Spider butt. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mine says Robert Smith Spider butt.
yeah, that was it. So
It was
yeah,
a Dryder
RSSB.
with Robert Smith as the front end.
Caliban reveals her name to try and stop
How did you decide what her true name was?
from stabbing
Oh, it's
Astraeus.
Hmm?
Her sword
No.
is but to serves
That's my secret
perfection and
soul.
strikes. Then we went outside and Caliban drops to her knees. 19 turns up like doing the slow clap, and he's like, "Where's Roland?" And I was like, "Oh, he's not here. It's a waste of your time." And then he disappeared with a swish of his cape.
Swish of his coat.
Oh, I'll put cape.
Cape's so very.
Okay, I'll change that to coat.
So, 19 has just disappeared literally into thin air, and Caliban has kind of recovered on the ground. What are you guys doing?
We think this thing has dissipated, haven't we? this glamour, whatever it is. Shall we go inside to see what we've done to possibly our real friends who are possibly not zombies, who are possibly we might have killed?
Who are possibly very dead.
Yeah, I think we should go check.
Because if there's people we could save in there, we should be doing that maybe.
I don't think they'd want to see us, to be honest.
I gather, yes, but let's go anyway.
So you're going around the corner and through the front door of the pub?
Yeah.
We
Warily.
come back out through
We'll
the
just
front
like-
door.
So can we see through the windows? Okay.
So you go around the front and you're looking through the windows.
Yeah.
It is a charnel house in there.
What's that mean?
There are chunky gibs everywhere. There are body parts and bodies. And
This
they're
wall of
looking-
chum is going to last possibly another couple of hours.
there's a nice water feature bisecting the bar. Nobody inside is looking particularly zombie.
Oh,
Okay, so we go.
Just pop my head into your...
mid-
whoopsies!
Whoopsie!
My bad!
I say we go up to my flat and decide what we do, because
Is there anybody who's alive who could be saved?
Nope.
no, because if they weren't chummed, you headshot them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The ones that are most recognisable have all got a lovely 9mm hole right in the middle of their head.
In fairness, they didn't suffer.
I don't know, the guy taking piss did suffer a bit. Just because he had the massive trunk out the side, didn't he?
Oh, that.
So you're going inside,
No, we're going into my flat.
and can you access the flat from
Yeah.
not going through the pub?
Yeah, there's stairs that go.
Okay. You go up to your flat, which is fine. You can start
I don't
hearing.
think I have a job anymore.
You start hearing all sorts of commotion outside as all of the people in the direction. Let's see. So Thomas shot through the back of the pub, which is west, east. Let's say west. As all of the people around the west side of the pub, around the back.
Looking in through the plasma pool.
So some of them are looking through the hole. Others are wondering, where's my house gone? People are wondering because they've got loved ones and pets and possibly children that were sleeping upstairs, and there's now no upstairs. There is a lot of commotion going on, and I really should have waited for Thomas to get back to explain that part.
Yeah.
So let's just wait for Thomas to come back to enjoy that.
I'm
So-
going to borrow your sofa for an hour.
Mm.
Or do you have is your flat big enough to have a spare bed?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've got a
I've
sofa bed.
crashed there before, haven't I? Yeah. I'm going to crash.
Yeah, so me too.
And I am asleep possibly before my head hits the pillow. Or possibly before I...
We take some time to rest, and
Mhm.
Okay. So I'll wait for Thomas to get back because I'm going to get us the right way around. Withstand is the mental one.
No, withstand is physical.
Oh, right. I'm going to write that down. So
Yeah, and
every
I'll
time.
put it on my... under the rests one, I think. Does it make sense? Or wherever.
That makes sense. Yeah.
oopsies. Over in that face.
Whoopsie! Yeah.
In my parents, so you know my parents roughly a little bit. In their bathroom at home, on the back of the door, is this massive kind of 19th century looking, turn of the century looking picture that's all in kind of
So,
different greens.
Withstand.
And it's got this like bridge with a train coming and falling off the end of it.
Oh, okay.
And it's got a masking tape over the top of whatever was written underneath. Oops.
So
One
it
year I
sounds
looked
like
over and I was like,
Yeah.
this is oh shit. My parents had put up a poster that said oh shit in their house.
Did you actually look what's in the tape?
Yeah. Oh shit. But forever and a day it was like, oops.
See, they do have a sense of humour.
Apparently my
So,
mum used to swear like a trooper.
Do you know what? I can actually imagine that.
1 hour rest.
It's always the
In a mo. Just wait for Thomas to get back.
Okay,
so
so
I'm going to need some
you're gonna-
rolls.
balls.
Whoa.
Balls.
Wow. He's what I like. A Roman and only one. We don't sell the Romans. So, just to bring you up to speed, you've gone upstairs to Hawk's flat.
Yeah.
and you're all about to take some rest. But before you take some rest, you start hearing a commotion out around the back of the pub as people kind of like are starting to peer through the hole through the side of the wall of the pub and the bigger hole in the building on the opposite side of the street. And then people are kind of realising that they've got spouses and pets and possibly children upstairs in buildings where there's no upstairs anymore. And this is kind of like going on like a domino. You can hear, you know,
Screaming and
kind
wailing.
of screaming and wailing and all sorts of commotion. We'll put it as commotion. So having looked through the windows,
Now you have some peaceful sleep.
having looked through the windows at all of the carnage inside and hearing the cries of a community that has been completely devastated.
Oh, music to
Can
my
everybody
ears.
make a resist?
This is my community we've destroyed.
Can everybody please make a resist?
Is this physical, mental?
Mental.
It's a mental one, so...
Is it an interaction? Are we meant to feel bad for this?
0.
8.
2.
I kind of feel I should be more resilient to this because, like, battles. But I've only got 2.
So everybody's going to take. Is it a wound?
Anguish.
Anguish. Everybody's getting anguish.
I'm going to spend
How do you get anguish?
Spend an intellect to... normally in combat. Spend
You
an
got the
intellect.
bowl.
I didn't get the ball out because I was using the aid. Bowls, no, the bowl's in the... no, in the top. In the top.
And bowl.
We have a bowl.
I'm going to spend it into it.
I'll have this here for me as an aid memoir.
Oh.
Oh, we can track how many we've spent throughout the session. Just to see how much.
And yeah, so you're all gonna get an hour's rest and then sort of convene.
Yeah. So I collapse asleep on the sofa bed.
I go to my room. You guys can. There's a sofa bed in the living room. Spare single bed in the spare room.
I'm just going to find the comfiest place on the floor.
Lotus position. Downward dog.
Are you your own futon?
He gets stuck halfway through every single time, and the slats keep on falling out.
Oh, I remember that.
I just realised the more of me that gets replaced with robot parts, the easier it is for me to become a transformer.
The less difficult it is for you to utilise magic, as there's less of you that's actually you.
Oh.
Yeah, just be glad we haven't played Cyberpunk or Shadowrun.
Because you'd be in trouble.
Yeah, but essence of like 2. 6 to start off with,
Yeah.
and then full cyber limb is 1 point.
Yeah.
So full cyber, yeah, 2 essence. No spells higher than level 2 for you, sucker.
I'm glad that doesn't take effect in this game.
Doesn't it?
No. Please.
So you all kind of like crash where you can and get some rest. And when you awake, we're now under the Imperator, which is sovereign of visions. And this game isn't magic.
What?
Sometimes conflict is needed, and the Imperator believes that keeping a level head and using intellect and wisdom rather than rage or brute force paves the path to victory. Of course, not every crisis point lies within a literal battle. Some conflicts take other forms, stressful situations where some are prone to make rash decisions based on emotion. But not the Imperator. Follow his example. The Imperator is the sovereign of the Visions family. He is a leader, an advisor, a teacher, and a mighty warrior.
Moment.
Events come to a head. Something happens to alter the course of future events, and it could be for the better or the worse. An NPC makes a wise choice in the midst of stress and conflict. A revelation is made of a new deciding factor.
I'm not allowed to live upstairs.
So,
My house, though.
you've all reconvened what in your kind of like living room,
Mm.
sort of thing, and although the battle felt like it was hours, it was seconds. It was maybe a minute at most of really kind of frantic action. So it's still relatively early at night, even with an hour's sleep. It's probably only about 10:30 at night. But kind of out of the back windows of the flat, you can see all sorts of official kind of goings on.
There's going to be Thard upstairs, isn't there?
There are Thar kind of walking around and trying to organise things. You can see people who you recognise as Visley. They're not people that you really know, but you know them by sight, and they're trying to kind of like move rubble and try and find as many survivors as there might be in the mess. And there's an awful lot of very official sounding voices downstairs.
Well, since we didn't actually know that there was I think we just tell them what we saw and what happened. We got put under a spell that made us think everyone's zombies. Simple as.
Evidence of the spell, then.
Yeah, because we remember it and they can get into our heads. I will happily volunteer myself.
Really? You happily volunteer?
Well, no, not happily volunteer, but you're my friend, so yeah, I'll volunteer.
I don't think we can trust the Thar generally, even if we are in the right. But it's a bit dodgy ground whether or not we were in the right. So I'm really not wanting to trust the Thar. Can teleportation be tracked?
If somebody knows that you're going to be doing it and they know what to look for, they might be able to read the kind of magical energy.
But not once we've gone.
They might be able to work out where you started and where you finished.
Magical ways.
But it's not like it's not like a train sort of thing where they go this platform to this platform. We know that's it. It's kind of like we kind of know that something happened here. We can kind of like sense the sort of like magical energy.
So
and they might be able to divine where it is that you went. But
we've got one of
might
these.
not.
Can I see if Roland's back on the same sun?
You can indeed.
How would I do?
You need to make a sorcery check. I think it's a level 4 ability, I think. Is finding the people under the sun.
No, it's level 1.
Oh, level 1.
It's the basic.
That's the basic one. There you go.
So one sorcery?
One sorcery.
Is there any way I can make this easier?
I
Like
can
more likely.
encourage you.
You can be encouraged.
So we'll do sortilege.
And yeah, sortilege would help. So I'm thinking, if they can track teleportation, my one's quite unique. However, this is from a literal secret group who are against the government, who they don't like. So if you guys channel onto my one, since it's fully upgraded so we can teleport, if Roland is under the sun,
You can teleport to the other.
we can teleport away safely.
Well, first things first, you need to see if you can find Roland.
The thing is, all of us need to have it upgraded to be able to teleport, and we don't all have it.
And I don't have a necklace in the first place.
Yeah, so it
You
wouldn't work.
can't detect him at all. Whether that's because he's not on the sun or you're not reading it right, you're not sure. Beep,
Try again.
beep, beep.
Oh no, there's a beacon.
No, I was just thinking,
What about just in
for
general?
Windows, that's in the
We'd
room.
be-
That's what it says. We are not reading it right.
Snowboard and I would be able to tell as well, wouldn't we? So we don't have to put anything too far into it.
Be able
But
to
like
tell.
to if Roland is about, so is it just him, or is it something that if all of us try it, to
How
have
many
it?
of those necklaces are there?
Well, I was
Just
thinking,
because you can't find Roland's necklace, you know where the other one is.
Ian's got it.
oh, where's Eddie?
Oh. We
Somebody get me a penny.
Yeah.
can go to the rose.
We could just go to the Actually, would
Can
they
we not
know
just
to look?
transport for the rose? They don't know we're anything to do with anything. They
I
don't
know.
anything.
If there
There's
were
an
any
old-
people alive in the pub, I think they would. We're quite recognisable.
Well, you
But
are.
there aren't any people alive in the pub. We've just had a look. We killed them all.
They're dead, Dave.
What?
They're all dead.
Peterson!
They're all dead, Dave.
What, Kachansky?
They're dead, Dave.
So let's just go.
Can I use this one to teleport everyone else as a group teleport?
They've not levelled up their particular.
Can't do it.
Oh.
And plus,
There's nothing stopping
Caliban
you
can't come
from
with us.
teleporting everybody.
Yeah, we don't have to do. The
Wait,
thing
can
is,
I open a portal in the rose and a portal here?
we possibly can't
Put it on
also.
everyone and just boom.
Why would you
Just
do that?
So-
Can
so
you
they can
just
pass it on.
teleport us?
Just open a
with your
portal
own- Because I don't think you go straight into the rose because we've got all the
Wards around
wards
there.
around it, but right next to it we can go.
Beanos.
Or, anywhere in that
The
area.
alleyway behind
Then it
Beanos.
doesn't take any. If they were tracking it, if they were looking, there's a lot of ifs. If they were, it'll just take them to that area, not necessarily to the rose. But let's do it to Beano's.
Yeah.
Now.
Wait, we don't know who that is. Though.
Don't care. Now.
Okay.
and then do it.
We know you're in there. Open up by the order of the Thar.
Like, teleport.
You sense somebody is about to put a boot through the door.
A 0 and a 7?
A 0 on which die?
Normal
Not
one.
the magic.
Ooh.
And it's a practice weave.
Rick and Morty style teleporty thing opens. You step through the
Big sword and diving through.
Jerry O'Connell says, don't slide twice.
Everyone through?
You all jump through.
I'll hop through and close it.
Excellent. The last thing that you can see as you kind of jump through the portal is the door getting kicked in and a kind of phalanx of the stony faced kind of Thar agents kind of walking in, and in the midst of them there's a gold skinned actual member of the Thar who's kind of leading things. It's very, very unusual for them to come into Fartown because they don't really have any jurisdiction. So if they're there, that means that the brown stuff has hit the fan. Vroomf. You teleport into the alley behind. Was it behind Beano's or behind the rose? Behind Beano's. So you've teleported into the alley behind Beano's. You've frightened a few cats, but that's about it.
No, cats explode around me.
No more death and destruction, even if they're kitties.
But you're in the alleyway with no kind of untoward effects.
I just wrote the word around for no reason instead of arrived.
Or we can go to the rose and see how Eleanor is.
Yeah.
If number 19 has been there or anything. Because
Okay.
the demons got in at one point to the rose, even though we had the
Mhm.
wards up.
So
So
that's through the hate list.
no.
It was because Roland had taken the
Oh yes.
chunk in. It had kind of
But I
given
just
them
want to see if he's specifically targeting 19 is specifically targeting us again. I want to check Eleanor's right.
So from across the street, the rose looks absolutely fine. I think it was a Thursday night we'd said, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So it's kind of average sort of Thursday night. It's kind of rolling around towards kind of them calling time at the bar because they don't have a 2 a.m. license here. 11 o'clock, the way it should be. And you can see kind of like a couple of people coming in and out. How far away is the
I
rose?
want to start be like, oh, that film was so great, and make it look like we would. If anyone witnesses us, it looks like we were off doing something else. And so if somebody said that they saw us, they didn't want to look a sour face or whatever, we'd be just like, oh, that movie was really good. And just look as if we were.
Okay, so before we do that, how far away was the rose from the
Literally.
Penn and
across the
Tellers?
Oh, from
Well,
Penn and
road.
Tellers?
It's like a
It was-
train journey, isn't it? It's like
Yeah.
a tram journey.
No, it was a short tram journey, so it's
And in which direction was the rose from?
Not
Away.
west.
Tellers?
not west.
Not west.
It's west, but not due west. So 4 or 5 kind of blocks up from the Rose, there is this gouged out pile of destruction. The patrons of the Rose don't seem to be particularly fazed by it, because this area, the kind of road that the Rose and the Beano's on, is recently redeveloped, and the kind of streets back there were all kind of like derelict and being redeveloped. So there was, this area is kind of, although there is kind of like, you know, nasty big gouge of destruction, it's all kind of like empty buildings and
Council's just up their game, that's all.
Yeah, that's it. People are just kind of thinking,
Gentrification, that's what it is.
oh, they're doing
Have you
really
seen-
well. I wonder if I
have
can
you
get a
seen Kimmy
Primark.
Have you ever seen Kimmy Schmidt? There's the lady who's what is it? Thingy Kane?
Carol Kane.
Carol Kane.
You look French.
She's
Pussy.
totally on about. She's like this old lady that is like the landlady of the flat that this Kimmy Schmidt character lives in, but she's on about gentrification of her area and stuff like that. That's totally what I imagined in my head.
Just instantly, as we're kind of coming out of the alleyway, I just remembered I've got my level 2 forte ability, so I will take where they those burns, because you got burnt. That was what caused the wounds to you, wasn't it? So I just kind of, with a touch, and like green energies flow out of my hand and heal that wound that you've taken.
Thank you.
Okay, so you cross the street towards the Rose. You are kind of like pretending like you've just been to the cinema.
And we're all like, what the?
Make an interaction check.
It's not that you're pretending, it's just your brain coping with the trauma you've just seen and the realisation we've just
Did-
murdered a load of
Zombie
innocent
movie.
people.
Yeah.
It was a great zombie movie. Everybody died, and it was in a pub.
4.
Shaun of the Dead?
And they were playing Don't Stop Me Now.
4.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, you are basically going. You start talking about that great movie with the zombies and stuff, and at the last minute you kind of realise that it might be a little bit too close to the truth, and you start kind of going, "Oh yeah, it was really funny with the Simon Pegg."
Yeah.
The Simon Pegg, was it like the Brian Kendrick?
The Simon Pegg.
No, it's an actual...
It's a wooden clothes peg.
Is an actual peg with a goatee.
Probably got a greater acting range.
Oh.
Hey, no, it's not
It's a peg, and still quite wooden, because it's an old-fashioned wooden clothes peg.
Yeah. But with Simon Pegg's face on.
Just a goatee.
No, just go to...
Just a goatee and the accent, which I can't do.
Next to a cornetto.
So you go into the Rose, and it's a normal kind of Thursday night. Eliana's behind the bar, looking a little bit kind of harassed, but nothing serious. She glances up and she kind of like sees you and sort of like gives you a kind of nod. She looks at Astreus a little bit weird, looks at the arm, kind of mouths a silent. But
Waves the
but-
fucking armour.
strange. She's gotten used to strange things from you lot. And she kind of like gives you a sort of like, you know, sit in your normal spot. I'll be over in a minute when it's quieting down a bit.
I will go behind the bar and start helping her.
Um,
Penn and Teller's is one thing. I've been there before quite a bit, but this is still very much your place and not my place.
so you go behind the bar to start helping. Eliana kind of like nods a sort of wordless thanks. And within kind of like 5 or 10 minutes, you've kind of gotten the sort of like the last order rush, because the bell's just about to be called. So everybody's kind of like making sure that they get their orders in. But once that rush has kind of like died down, Eliana comes and sits over at the table with you and looks around. What happened to your face? What happened to your arm? What's happened to your hair?
We'll tell you once everyone's gone. We can't discuss in the open at the moment.
I didn't know my hair had fun.
Yeah, we were meaning to.
So it's you look in the mirror.
I've
you
rushed to a mirror.
you look in the mirror behind the bar. Your hair hasn't burned, but you now have a white streak through your hair.
Oh, that's cool.
Rogue steady.
I was thinking more guts, but yeah.
I mean, that's probably like the laser blast taking a load of my life away. But that's cool.
That's new.
It didn't happen after the laser blast.
I don't know when it happened.
Given how much preening you do about your nutted body, I am surprised.
I mean,
I'm a nugget.
man.
I'm a nugget, therefore I do thousands of crunches. Thousands. I have no other muscle but my arms of steel.
Match the arms and legs. Oh, I was a bit too busy punching Spider Robert Smith in the face to notice.
Probably a good call. Well, no, it hadn't happened then.
Did that happen?
When we slept,
When we teleported.
would Thar have put a tracker on you or something? I don't know.
Project Anus.
Oh snap!
Yeah.
So,
Once the patrons have gone well, we'll tell you what happened.
was it anything to do with the big light show about an hour and a half ago? Oh, right then. She said, I'll be back in a minute. She goes behind the bar, looks at her watch, rings the bell, the usual. You going to do anything while the patrons kind of start drinking their last
I'd
bits
have
and
gone
filling out?
and, as part of that drinks fresh, gone and got drinks for everybody just to make it look like we were.
Yeah, 10-minute action to refill my saucery.
Sauce. Actually, yeah, I think I might take another 10-minute action to. Actually, no, I don't want to take from now. Take from the back so we can see how much we've used.
And my one action rest to do that one.
Splendido. So, we now have the cat, which is the 6 of notions. And it says companion. I'm not sure what that means.
Is this sun allergic to me?
Is the sun allergic to you?
Well,
Or are you allergic
Other
to
cats.
the sun?
my
Slowly
quirk
running,
is
so-
cats are allergic to me. I can't go near cats. Cats can't go near me. It just doesn't work well.
The companion, it matches the previous card's adjustments.
So that was a sovereign.
So basically, it is still the sovereign. Everybody gets +1 to all ventures and +2 if it's a matching heart,
There we go.
which is quite nice. So we're still at +1 to all of our rolls. It's that adrenaline spike.
Yeah.
Cats see much. They prowl about or simply find a good vantage point and watch.
Cat chess.
And sleep. Should something really catch their eye, however, they move to investigate. Curiosity killing the cat, as the saying goes, and it's true. But cats have 9 lives, and thus they can afford a little curiosity. The cat is the companion of the Notions family. It watches over them and sometimes even protects them. Someone important to matters at hand is a misanthrope and lives alone. A cat takes an interest. A trap is sprung by curiosity. An NPC's cleverness gets them into trouble. So the
This is going to be a catastrophe.
I'm not feeling like anymore.
Oh,
GM
nice.
flip, you're getting a point of despair just for that. So the locals kind of make their way out in dribs and drabs, in kind of like good nature. And Eliana goes up and locks the front door, and comes over and kind of like plonks herself down into a couch. Now, what is it that's going on?
Oh, you sitting comfortably. Oh, big.
She gets up, she goes back around the bar, she comes back.
I'll get up and I'll get her. I'll get the bottle of Green Sun tequila.
I was on Bacardi and Coke.
So, you start spinning the tale. Who's going to tell the story? You don't have to role play it, but who's breaking the news?
I think I probably will, because and kind of on the start with the whole 19 hoodwinked us and tell him that it was all a vision from the beginning, but we truly believed that we were doing all these things. And some people acted a bit more rash than
So,
others.
At the mention of zombies, 2 fingers of whiskey. Then the chum, 2 more fingers of whiskey. Then the super light show, which has gone over there, 4 fingers of whiskey, of tequila.
Oh, 2 fingers.
Too sweet. And then the whole
The measure?
spider
Yeah.
of doom and everything She just looks at the rest of the bottle and
I hand her the bottle.
and she starts glugging. So I'm still new here. What does this mean?
This means bad.
It's very bad. Like Snowboard said, we thought it was an illusion. That's what we were told.
We thought it was actually
We thought it was
zombies.
real.
Right, actually, it was actually zombies and actually real, and that when Coburn was outside, could feel like this magical thing going on around it. That some kind of spell. And then when we looked in the window, it wasn't zombies. They were my friends, people I've known for years. And we did that.
It also means that number 19, who is clearly out to get Roland or something, can mess with our heads.
Is it 19 though, or is it just a follower of 19? I don't think we established that.
I think that was 19.
Was Matthew McConaughey?
Yeah, that's true. I forgot that.
That amount of power.
Yeah.
It was a demon of whatever.
Yeah.
My sight proved that it was a demon, but
as you kind of like relaying all this, she sort of like seems to sort of like visibly deflate. So what are you guys going to do now?
Drink. And think. And then thinking about
I
drinking.
She
I
kind of
take what's
gestures-
left of the bottle of the tequila and just open it because
She gestures towards the bar in a kind of like, help yourself sort of thing. And then she kind of like goes a little bit quiet. And she says, well, I don't think there's anything I can do right now. So I'm going to go to bed. I suggest that you guys put your heads together and have a think about what's going to happen.
is it okay that we stay down here for now?
But she kind of like waves away the, kind of like the of course sort of thing. But she kind of catches Stowbold's eye for a second and kind of like as though she wants a word. And so you three are left at the table and she kind of looks at Stowbold, and although over the past kind of like, days and weeks, she's sort of gotten used to the oddness of Saturnine and everything. The kind of the scared little girl that you knew is kind of like right back there in front of you. Does this mean they're going to send me home?
Who do you think are going to send you home to where?
They.
Home to where?
Back to Shadow, back away from all of this.
I don't think so, and I don't think they're going to try, but we won't let them.
She kind of nods, but you can tell that there's sort of like that little part of her that she's not quite sure that she believes you. She thinks that you'll do whatever you can, but she's kind of, you get the feeling that she thinks that might not be enough, but she kind of, okay. She goes back to the bar and she gets another bottle of tequila. Good night. And she goes back upstairs to leave you to your ruminations.
Do people have like more resilience to alcohol here? Because surely a bottle of tequila would kill somebody.
It's
No.
gonna kill me.
no, me and her polished off 3 in one evening.
What proof is tequila?
Hmm?
It's a spirit. A strong spirit, isn't
It's
it?
about 35% proof.
It's 3 bottles, or even a bottle and a half. It's not good for you.
Well,
Good evening for me.
She didn't know us guys in
She wasn't
at all,
complaining
did she? Between me, Dave, Mark, and
How old is she?
thingy, you could get through 3 bottles of Jack in an evening, could you?
well, yeah. I mean, at uni, my starter for 10 when we'd have like drinks evenings at uni was I've got a 1 litre Stein, and I put a whole bottle of Jack Daniels in it, and then just top it off with Coke, and that would be my starter for the evening. So 3 bottles of tequila.
To be honest, one sip of tequila is enough.
1 tequila, 2 tequila, 3 tequila, 4.
4.
Don't forget though, this is a pub. It's probably watered down.
Yeah. I'm sat there rather quiet because it's hitting me that it's like shit.
We've caused an awful lot of death to an awful lot of innocent people.
To my friends, people I know that I serve drinks to on a nightly basis. It's like we thought it was okay, and it wasn't.
We probably killed Terence the spider.
Terence the spider.
But it might not have been his fault. He wasn't
himself.
when we, he wasn't like that when we knew him.
Humans possessed by demons become zombies. Spiders possessed by demons become Robert Smith riders.
Makes sense.
That's what anything is, to be honest.
Wrong.
Well, I think I don't know what to do because, like, if the Thal come, I think they're not going to be happy with you guys, but just by accident, I accidentally killed.
You didn't accidentally. You deliberately fired that thing off. That's not an
I
accident.
didn't
Yeah,
think.
we accidentally killed all those people.
I didn't think it'd be
That powerful.
that powerful. You know, I only wanted to have
It's
like.
only like kind of.
I wanted it to be like Kirby's Dreamland, you know, cute little stars and explosions. Not
Not the Death Star.
the Death Star.
All around.
all
I-
stars are the Death Star if you get close enough.
Drink.
That's going down.
Yeah, book of quotes.
So even if we are under illusion, they're not going to be happy that I used that much magic in one area,
I reckon.
just at all.
Oh, so sorry. We go and talk to Dragonfly Faceman. Because he knew a lot of things. He doesn't like the Thal. Seem to hold power in a lot of our places. If there are ways that we can help some of the people we've hurt, or help ourselves, or help just generally.
Calling in favours from him. Do you really want to owe him a favour? I know how flavours can snowball. Favours can snowball.
Flavours can snow blur.
He wants information from us about finding Aliena and stuff like that. She's now more secure than she's been in the past. But this new threat from 19 is putting her at danger, and he wants us to be a strong fight. So if we're in danger, he doesn't want that. He wants
And
to help us.
one of our five is missing.
Yeah, we
True.
don't.
And we've got this
also,
demon after
he may,
Who was part of wronging himself? So
and he's always actually, although his motives have been quite shady, he's never hurt us. He's always been to support us. Why he wants us is
I wish I knew where that other bit of notes had gone, because that's where I had all of my names.
was it Matthew Driver?
No, he's the
He's the Knights of
Knights
the
of
Name.
the Name.
Oh, right.
It's I've written all. I had a sheet with everything written on it for my little webby web, and it's gone missing.
I haven't seen anything else. I've not done a massive amount of moving around.
No, I'll probably find it tucked in the back of something. So I was using this pad last week and the week before, but there's a week in the middle I was using a different pad.
I'll have a quick look.
But yes, you can go and see
Crystal Fire.
Crystal Fire.
No, I couldn't show the cover and see what it is. So, not in terms of favours or anything like this, but he might want to help out the goodness of his heart because that's his motivation. He wants to help. Oh, he wants us to be a fighting force.
No, it was A4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what colour?
I just remember A4. It was ruled. That's right. We'll manage.
Sorry. I don't have that many A4 ruled pads.
That's good. Yeah, you can go and see Christopher if you want to. So, can you remember what you were doing before Zombie Pub? Or, as I've written here, Pub of Doom occurred?
Looking for Roland, wasn't it?
No, we were waiting for Shoeless Joe to, Shoeless.
Oh yeah, Shoeless Joe was.
We'd done the whole
Chalkboard
ghost
Mark.
in Hawk's sortier thing to ask him to get in contact with the ghost of Chalkboard Mark in the Eternal Party in the Pale,
Yes.
because the spiders had left you a message saying, how much do you know about Chalkboard Mark?
Because I sent a message out asking about Harley Quinn, didn't I?
Yeah.
And they came back with that, and it's just like, ooh.
Can you remember what else? There was a few things that you had going on. Fentiman Glade?
Fentiman Glade, yeah. That's a name that I still have got no connections to. But
Cool.
if we
Embrace the null.
catch up with Harley Quinn, I'm going to cut bits off of him until I find out what it has to do with me, because that's a name that I got from inside his mind.
Let's check that I don't have any bits written down in here. I don't believe I did.
Yeah, because all of that happened, and then we'd gone to the bar, and that's when we saw the 19 guy.
Yeah. Because we'd let Shoeless Joe
Yeah.
have a go on you.
Yeah, and he now lives in my
Well, he was a ghost.
he's in my sortier, so yeah.
What's the sort of
Slightly haunted.
If you imagine, it's a wooden handle like that with a crescent of material, and it's what Vizsla
fabric?
used. No, like glass or bone or gold or obsidian or whatever, and it's what Vizsla use instead of wands. Wands fell out of favour just after the war, but they will normally allow a Vizsla to channel more sorcery points. Some of them come with drawbacks, so some of them come with drawbacks to like physicality, but you can pick them up for 100 crystal, and it'll give you, I think, 2 extra. 100 crystal will give you about 3 extra sorcery and 1
Yeah,
vex in physicality.
that's what
The
mine-
one that she's got was quite powerful, so it gives, I think, it's like 6 points extra.
4. I've got it. Mine is a curved ebony wand with a leather handle. I gained 4 Bene in sorcery and a vex in physicality, and it cost me 4 mage coins.
But you got it for 2 because it's
Slightly haunted.
Slightly haunted.
But yeah, you know, like
Like
so
a
you
tambourine
you
without
hold
the
it like
bells.
that. Yeah, that's
Thank you.
Less jingly bits.
oh, timbre sortier. I actually want a sortier that is a tambourine as well.
Don't mention that with Thomas, otherwise he'll weaponise it. I've got a sortier for you. In fact, I've got 8 of them.
Tag team.
How much is Caliburn drinking? She's a little bit off centre. Does she break her own rule?
Yeah.
Caliburn's got a rule.
Yeah.
She'll only sleep with somebody once. Does she accidentally stumble back into Elena's bedroom again?
Oh,
Or does she find one of the spare rooms?
I think she goes to Elena's room.
Flip a coin if you're unsure.
Writing Elena's room.
Yeah.
Blank bedroom. Elena's.
I'll take the rest of that. Like I say, green sun tequila every time.
There's already a bottle upstairs.
Yeah.
The Council of War is now diminished down to 3. Are you all kind of deciding that
Yeah.
you're going to...
It's
Can't
not
sleep
what we
on it.
can do tonight at all, really. But we're in a safer place than we were in my flat.
Okay. So the night passes without incident. You're woken up in the morning by the sounds of pots and pans in the kitchen and the occasional as a drunk Eliana set or hung over Eliana, sets about,
Possibly still drunk, Ellie.
possibly still drunk, sets about kind of making breakfast for everybody the following
I'll be there
morning.
with her, obviously.
Yes.
We've now got the crowded tomb. This is the one of
I don't like
secrets.
that. We're all together.
Yes.
So you could say we're a crowd.
I'm still passed out on the pool table.
So Caliban has gone back up to Eliana's room for the night. Hawk has drank herself into a stupor and fallen asleep on the pool table.
Classy.
Astraeus is a lightweight because of his nuggetiness, and
I've just been
has
dropping,
attempted to USB interface with the kettle.
I've just been dropping shots through endless portals and watching it go like that and pouring all the different colour ones, so it's just like a rainbow waterfall.
Okay.
What magic is enhanced?
This is pale magic is enhanced, and green is diminished.
Secrets.
So you're kind of playing Portal with
Secrets.
shots.
Too much.
Okay.
I'm playing pool.
This.
She's on the table.
Yeah, exactly. That's what makes it interesting.
It's
So
a night
we've had this one a
we've
few
slept,
times.
haven't we? So we can gain back some stuff.
You get pretty much all of your.
Yeah, you're
Spot
basically back up and playing fit. So the tomb lies at the end of all stories, the reward for the greatest monarch and the lowliest beggar. Of course the tomb is crowded. It grows more crowded each day. Mourners crowd around the tomb, but it is even more crowded within. So many deaths, so many endings. Crowded tomb.
Totally not magic.
Crowded tomb is the location card of the Secrets family, because nobody's going to know about this, and thus represents a permanence or is related to a physical place. This means that the finality that it represents probably occurs in a specific and significant location. Game narrative. Someone dies. Something ends. An NPC is filled with sadness. This game is not magic. So you all come downstairs, you kind of summoned by the sounds of pots and pans and the smell of glorious bacon wafting upstairs. Those who didn't go to bed, are likewise, roused by the lovely smell. You look at Astraeus and that white streak has grown. It's now lots of kind of white patches throughout your hair.
But does it still look cool?
It looks less cool because it's not like, the Mr. Fantastic kind of grey temples, which shows kind of character and class, and it's not like the Guts white streak that shows badass. This is more like, hey, I don't know how to dye my hair.
I'm not sure this is going to work because green magic's diminished, but I'm enhanced.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to wish and hope, and a hawk is just kind of lying there on the pool table groaning. Okay, use my healing touch ability. It's normally 3 points of sorcery, but green magic is
Enhanced?
green's diminished, so it costs me an extra sorcery point to cast it.
Yeah.
And it will normally heal one wound, so I'm reckoning that might just kind of it's either gonna magic away the hangover, or it's gonna get it all out in one hit.
Okay, let's see what happens.
And I'm at +1 for this because my son is enhanced. 8.
Yay!
Oh, you burp slightly, and suddenly everything feels fine. It is now no longer like 1,000 dwarves have shat in your head. So, you sit down to breakfast with renewed vigour.
Oh, and I munch.
Eliana takes one look at you.
It's like a waterfall of rainbows.
Your hair.
Your hair.
What about my hair?
Go have a look.
Have a look.
There's a mirror behind the bar.
It's
Goes
good.
look behind the bar. Nope! Drops down to
Yeah,
the
oh.
floor.
No, that's actually your face.
Is his face aging or is it just his hair?
Just his hair. It's like a badger brush gone wrong.
Oh.
So much adrenaline in my nugget
Breakfast.
body.
Mushrooms?
Does anyone know of anything that could cause this? Because you were fine before we left my...
But it's clearly growing, so whatever started it may not have been immediately him getting the first strike. It might have been before that.
You know what? I need to calm down. I'm going to cast this spell on myself.
Because that never went wrong ever.
Well, it's the note rope, isn't it?
The what?
Note rope. Nah.
Debate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nah, I don't think I'll do that actually. Tempting.
So
Just get a bit of a string of it, just to calm me down a bit.
has sleep brought you any closer to a decision about what you're going to do?
We need to find Roland, but not with, right now. I don't think it's a...
You get
So
the feeling-
issues that we've got. Okay, list them. 1, Roland.
Yes.
2, chalkboard mark.
Yep.
Ghost thereof.
3 Penn and Tellers
Yeah.
and the shit that went down.
And 4, 19. Surprisingly enough, the issue number 19 that we've got is the number 4, but whatever, we'll get to that one.
Sad date.
Oh, and 5, Harlequin.
Yeah.
We've got
And
enough to
some
make
of them
ourselves
are,
a
yeah, some of
pentagram
them
of
are, some of
problems.
them are linked.
Got 99 problems and a bit chain. Oh, yeah, Danny, yes it is. 100 problems. I now have 100 problems.
I love that meme. It's really funny. My favourite one is the John Wick one. This is the John that Snow should have. Oh, not Snow.
Daenerys.
No, the dog.
that Ghost deserves.
Ghost
Yeah.
it.
Oh, poor Ghost. The whole reason he didn't hug Ghost is because it would have cost too much for CGI and they were saving the budget for the dragons.
For the next episode, which is where all the budget went. I mean, all the budget.
The chalkboard mark issue, we need to wait for Shoeless Joe.
Yeah. Roland, we're not going to find him anytime soon. He'll come back when he needs to come back.
He's like
He's
a
like a
boomerang.
cat.
No, because he doesn't explode when he's near you.
Um,
Yeah, he does. He explodes in rage.
Have you seen him lose his temper?
Not yet.
Chalkboard Mark and
So we've got to wait on
Harlequin
chalkboard mark.
kind of are linked.
Yeah.
And then there's the 19 Penn and Tellers.
And they are kind of linked as well.
Yeah. I think immediately, because that's not going anywhere and it's still out there, we need to go, I think,
Crystal Fire.
Crystal Fire.
He's given us a calling card, hasn't he?
Has there been any, is there like a paper come through the door or
There's the
anything like
Noosphere.
that? The Noosphere, is there anything about restrictions on travel? Anything about getting to
Terror
town?
attacks or
Terror,
anything like
you know.
What
Are
do
we-
they think is going on?
Yeah.
What does the world think is going on?
So you can all dip into the Noosphere. It's not a problem. At the moment, all of the reports are saying that there's been an unusual magical occurrence in Fartown.
They're not wrong.
The Thar are urging calm at this time, and they are trying to investigate the cause. At the moment, they're not sure if this is some sort of random magical phenomenon, which it could be, because magic is magic and it's very, very temperamental. Although some of the more strict, kind of zealous members of the Thar are kind of saying that it was definitely a kind of like a domestic terrorist sort of attack. But they're being countered by others that believe that it's some sort of hitherto unknown hate cyst phenomenon.
One of the reasons why Fartown is kind of sectioned off as a like a pocket dimension is so magical mishaps like this don't affect the city in general.
So yay.
Yeah,
So
The-
how does it come through to our part of the city?
Right, just
Or
go.
is
No,
it
no.
Barca?
We're still in Fartown. All of the different districts that we're in are in Fartown. We don't usually go too far outside it.
Yeah.
You'll
You'll be pleased to know that the report says that this trail of destruction goes in a straight line originating from Penn and Teller's. When it hits the edge of Fartown, frumph, it's like there's a hard barrier. Fartown, fine.
So that's the
But still,
Fartown.
Fartown.
Because Fartown's made up of a lot of different neighbourhoods, each of which is run by a Gerant, which is like a local sheriff. There is still an amount of blasted space in between each one of them, as there is in between the different districts of Satterine. One thing we could do in theory to get the Thar off our backs is to go to the Gerant of your neighbourhood, fess up maybe, and offer to lend our skills in rebuilding.
Or to catch 19, the perpetrator, the evildoer of this situation. We're just victims here. We're just
I'm just finding it really hard to try and portray to somebody and not sound like a complete and utter nut job. And I know in a magical world that we did it because they turned into zombies. We could have just been tripping balls. You know, there's lots of...
The tripping balls defence is not going to help.
It's not, you know, it's...
Sorry, Your Honour. I was tripping balls.
And that's what it sounds like, you know? It's that absurd.
So is that absurd in the world of...
Don't forget when you guys, sorry, speaking as ex-GM, don't forget you guys kind of took that trip to Ravenholm.
Yeah.
And the hate cyst there had turned an entire neighbourhood into a zombie field
Very true.
thing. There's, you know, we are on the shores of the abstraction, which leads to the blue sun. You go too deep into the blue sun, you enter the realm of nightmares. Illusion magic is a potent... Illusion is a little bit intransient here because illusion is the domain of grey, and the indigo sun that Satterine is under the light of truth. So illusion magic doesn't work that well, but it works.
Yeah.
It's certainly doable.
No, so we could do, I guess.
Worst comes to worst. At the very beginning, we all got given one of these, which just solves the problem for us.
It unlocks a problem or barrier.
Well, what we could do is we could potentially talk to Crystal Fire, see what he suggests or can help us with,
Across the wicked keys.
and then go fess up, because he might have some way of kind of not being, but lawyering.
Also,
us, if that makes sense.
If we are trying to go to the Gerant and say, hey, we can help because of X, Y, and Z. At the moment, we're not that special. Like, there are other people who can do what we can do. But if Christopher is able to give us something like, this will help make things better, whatever, we've got something else to go with.
Yeah.
Can Crystal Fire be our Saul Goodman?
Yeah. It's a good lawyer up.
We're not doing Better Call Crystal Fire.
I'd say we
That's
should
a
do...
higher Crystal Fire.
Hey! You are enhanced. Draw. Enhanced.
I've not watched Better Call Saul, but I've seen him, and he's just perfect in that.
I got to
what
the
are you
penultimate episode
choosing to do?
and gave up it.
Oh, but the last episode's so satisfying. It just wraps up.
Give-
Yeah, but it's what
So
happens
give
in the
him a
penultimate
message
episode
and-
that we went, no.
See what happens.
Yeah. Because he knows he normally he's done his teleport thing.
But he's kind of on his own schedule most of the
Yeah.
time. So give him a... Well, don't tell him we're giving him a deadline, but say, like, we'll wait, I don't know, 6 hours or something.
And you need to see you fairly quickly
Yeah.
Please.
before lunch.
So you're sending that? So is it a phone number that?
It's
you've got?
a kind of
It
it's an
is.
enhancement to their dragonfly necklaces.
Okay.
They can send them a message. It's one way.
So you send a message saying that you need to meet, and almost instantly a doorway appears, the door opens, and he pops his head out and goes, I think we need to talk.
Yes, sorry.
So he gestures for you to go with him.
I bring my bacon croissant with me.
Croissant, what do you think this is?
It's Scotch.
Alien is amazing. Scotch bacon
Scotch
croissant.
bacon croissant.
Yes.
Like Christmas dinner meal now.
So you following him through?
I'm still in PJs.
He doesn't, despite the
I'm still in Eliana's PJs.
he doesn't know the difference. Despite the mask, you can tell there is impatience.
Yeah, okay.
So you go through the door and you end up in the office that he's been in before. He goes and sits down behind the desk wearily, and as much as you can kind of tell from his normal sort of unflappableness, you get the feeling he's been in the office. You get the feeling that he is very flapped. The kind of air smells like, you know, this office has been pretty well occupied for the last 12 or 13 hours. His clothes look a little bit sort of like rumpled, and you can see so many empty coffee cups kind of around the desk. So he sits down.
I'm going to tidy up the coffee cups for him because that's.
He's got his cantrip.
Yeah, it's a cantrip for me. Make a nicer work environment. Coffee cups kind of void out into space.
Somehow, the impenetrable kind of mask looks exasperated. Just sit down, and he gestures to some chairs that normally aren't in the room, but they seem to have kind of like been put there, and they don't quite match the sort of decor. But there's a chair for each of you, and there's an extra blank chair. Think you're missing somebody?
We don't know where Roland is at the moment.
Okay, so let's start right at the beginning. I presume this has something to do with last night. I'm going to regret asking this, but explain.
So explain.
We were in the pub. All was good.
He doesn't have a reclining chair, but somehow it has reclined.
He's just felt so much empathy and sorrow for this man.
I got you, bud. I got you, bud. Lean back on me.
The glamour and the zombies, I can understand. I've surreptitiously had a couple of people go in and have a look at the pen tellers, and the divinations that they've been able to take there have been absolutely outstanding. Whatever happened there is the likes that has not been seen since the war. An awful lot of magical energy was pumped into that building. For what it's worth, I believe you. You've been reckless before, but I've never known you to be cruel or so wanton in destruction. You would do best not to speak for a moment. Also, it seems that whatever glamour was in effect was happening both ways, because we can see from the bodies that have been there and the I've forgotten the word. The shades of some of the people that were there were managed to be called and spoken to, and they seem to be seeing what you were seeing, but in reverse.
What they were
We were
seeing
zombies.
us as monsters.
Precisely. That entire place was a powder keg that was set to go off. I have no idea why. I don't know why this 19-person thing is so interested. That part, doesn't seem to be much of a problem. And the Thar actually seem to be of a similar mind. These sorts of things happen, regretfully though they are, and they seem to happen in Fartown more often than anywhere else. What's not going down so well, and what I've spent the last 12 hours trying to keep on top of, is why there was a column of destruction going from the pub to the very edge of Fartown itself.
A miscalculation.
I should very well think so.
Forgot to carry the 1. I didn't.
And the 16 zeros.
I didn't.
This wasn't just a miscalculation. This is orders of magnitude.
Yeah, I forgot to remove the, x squared.
He fluxed, yeah.
Should know better.
I fluxed it. Sorry. We all have the moments, and that was just the wrong time. I wanted the Kirby's Dreamland explosion.
What is flux then? This is in game.
Mm.
I didn't understand that.
It's a mechanic, but it's like the fickle nature of
Of
magic.
Yeah. It's like the Sooth deck is actually an item in the game as well.
And the
Don't understand
testament
that.
is a.
I
Everyone
understood the
has a-
testament
item,
was, but I don't understand the system.
You could actually go out and buy in the game.
Yeah.
You can buy a Sooth deck.
I guess would be like
One of
Tarot cards.
Yeah.
tarot cards, isn't it?
one of the fortes is reads the Sooth deck.
But when you're saying we're under whatever sun we're not, we're only in the ones on the
That's
way.
the currents of magic that kind of flow. The path of suns is the way that kind of magic is flowing, like a tide and a current. All magic flows from the invisible sun, down the path of suns, back up the night side, and back to the invisible sun. And where it is on that, where the tides are, and where the
Okay. Interesting.
That
Thank
was
you
a
for
bit-
explaining.
Stress. I'll grant you the fickle nature of magic. What I'm struggling to fathom is why you literally brought a star to a bar fight.
Thought we'd wipe up the place a bit.
He kind of regards all of you. We had the beginnings of an understanding and a relationship. A little bit of quid pro quo. You help me, I help you. I presume you're here because you want some of the quid.
Mr. Fire, Crystal, Chris.
At the moment, I think Sir will do.
So, are you aware of the tenor of the blade?
Would he be?
Possibly.
Probably. This guy knows most things.
He would. There's a bit that we've not really delved into, which is what's called the Mysterium. There are 13 different secret souls, and people who are all of the same secret soul are kind of like an organisation to themselves. The Mysterium are 13 kind of random, kind of elected, fairly powerful agents of each of the secret souls, and they guard something. I'm not going to go into too much as to what that is. If you've revealed your name and your soul to somebody, and if they're of the same one, it's like having that kind of secret handshake. And people, Vislate are likely to know that there are other souls, so they're people who are tied to the abyss. It's not something you go around shouting about until you do it, because there's power, not to the actual thing, not just to the actual thing itself, but to the secrecy of it. So he would be aware, and I reckon he would not be in the Mysterium, but he would know that the Mysterium exists, and he would know that there are agents, and that people that have these souls have these kind of beliefs over and above heart and foundation and order, because it's a way of life and a way of doing things.
Okay, so he doesn't say one way or another. He just go on.
The tenet is to cut, and cut effectively, and cut to finish things. I believe he did what he did, albeit over judging things, as a means to end the situation in the most direct and effective method possible.
That was the idea.
As soon as you start to talk,
Or zip it.
zip. No, it will be a finger, and that's unerringly done without looking.
Zanshin.
Yeah.
Absolutely there. He kind of slumps back into his chair and nods. Very well. I may not quite follow the logic that got you there, but I can certainly understand the need to act decisively, and I understand that decisions made in the heat of the moment are not always the most considered. What do you need?
Well, we actually want to help make some of this right, and obviously you've been for the last 13 hours trying to deal with some of these things, so we want to help with part of that, but we also want to make sure this kind of thing doesn't happen by getting 19, and any help you can give us in this will be gratefully received.
We told you about 19's link to Roland, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Tracking down a demon isn't exactly the sort of thing that I can just order out for.
We appreciate
But
that.
you know people who know people.
I know people who know people who know demons. I mentioned quid pro quo. You're asking an awful lot.
We figured that there would be a price.
When I said before that somebody was missing, you took me to think that it was Roland. We know very well that Mr. Deshane is not under the sun. Where's Eliana?
In the kitchen and the room, I assume.
We've not told him where she is before.
Yeah. Sorry?
We've not told him where she is before.
Exactly.
She is in the rose. We've put her under a lot of warding because he can't get in the rose, can he?
Yeah, it's just a pub.
Roland has warded it.
Yeah.
You can't teleport straight in and straight out.
Yeah.
No,
Demons.
he can't open his door straight in there, can he?
He did this morning.
Did he?
Yeah.
Although you're not sure if that's because he's just that damned powerful, or if the nature of the wards are if you invite something, it can cross. But regardless,
Vampire stuff.
it has.
Because you've got the dragonfly necklaces in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Also, it is a pub. It does have a front door. Which is also warded.
She is the landlady of the Rose, and she spent most of her time there. It was what we figured to be the most sensible place for her to be, without causing too much trouble or getting noticed for her not being Vizsla.
So he looks up at Stobold. Up until now, you've been rather coy with giving me details of Eliana. I can't say that I fully understand, but I can sort of respect it. I'd very much like to meet with her when this is over.
She is her own woman, and we've told her about you, but we will have a chat, and if she's willing, we will help aid that situation.
I think you'd best be very insistent. Okay. As soon as I get any word whatsoever, I'll contact you in the normal method.
Meaning you don't have a word now.
Sorry?
Meaning you don't have a word now.
About where 19 is?
About how, yeah.
No.
No.
In the meantime, we felt that going to the called
Geralt.
Geraint of my home district to tell him what happened.
George.
Yeah.
I know George. I'll put him.
Basically, we wanted to make sure you thought it was a good idea before we go in.
Well, regardless of what I think about what a good idea is or not, it seems that you'll do it.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed. No, he doesn't say that, but you get the sense that's the kind of feel.
That's three anguish. That's three anguish.
So
I'm dead now. Killed me.
he
Too much for my little nugget.
he gestures you back to the door. I'll start pulling strings at my end. In the meantime, I suggest you go and see George.
Thank you.
From underneath his desk, you're not sure if there's drawers under there or if he's just reached into kind of like a kind of hole in somewhere else. He pulls out a card and he passes it across to you. Hand this to him when you see him, and hopefully that might smooth some things over.
Thank you.
Why are you still here? Go.
Yeah, we'll turn around and pop to it. When we open his door, do we end up back in there?
Yeah, so back through the door, into the rows. The door closes behind, and the kind of seam where the door was just seems to kind of fizzle into nothing.
So,
Take a look at Astraeus' hair.
As it was when he left.
Is it longer or is it just turning white?
It's just getting kind of like white patches in it. I mean, how long is it anyway? Yeah. So you're looking a little bit like Pepe Le Pew. What?
white stripes.
He's a skunk. He's a
Cartoon
he's a
character.
Looney Tunes. Was it
It's
Looney
Looney
Tunes?
Tunes.
It's Looney Tunes.
Oh,
Yeah,
I know
the
that
skunk.
one.
The French one with the,
Yeah, I
the
know.
massively.
I just didn't know.
Oh,
his
I was
name.
going to say romantic intentions, but he wasn't
He's a
romantic.
sex pest.
He was rapey.
Yeah. Yeah. Looney Tunes, man, can't watch them anymore. Tom and Jerry with the housemaid. Thomas? Lordy, Thomas! Yeah.
But women do talk like that when they come from certain places. That's a thing that
but it
happens.
is a racist caricature.
It's a
Pretty much
very racist
all of
caricature.
them. There's a lot that they won't show because of like how they depict, like because a lot of the early cartoons were like war propaganda ones because they were shot in the 40s and 50s.
Donald Duck punching Hitler.
The one with Daffy in Japan and the Japanese soldiers. Oh my goodness!
Even worse than that is in the early Looney Tunes when Bugs was pretending to be Japanese. Oof.
Yeah,
Not good.
Yeah.
So you're back in the rows. You've got a letter of introduction.
I said we had to go see.
I'm gonna go get dressed.
Yeah, let's go get tidied up and.
And breakfast.
Okay. So
Very
you
much to understand.
I'm gonna go get a biro and sort out this hair.
Diet.
Biro, like even a Sharpie would have been better.
No, I'm gonna do it with the biro.
okay.
That's gonna fail.
So
That's
you
gonna be
reconvene
great.
about half an hour later. You've done your ablutions. You're dressed. You're equipped. You're suited and booted. You, in addition to your white streaks of hair, have now just got ink all over your hands, and you've got kind of fingerprints on your face where it's not worked.
I'm gonna wash
It's
this
like
off
when you
real
dye
quick.
your hair and it's all over your scalp, none of it's on your hair.
Okay, not that bad.
So you're making your way back to the district and off to see George. Okay. Taking the tram.
Yeah.
So you get on the tram heading across, and there are a lot more people on the tram than normal. And at first you're a little bit suspicious and you think, oh, what's this? But then you realise that an awful lot of them are just rubberneckers and they're coming to look at the amazing destruction.
What
But
about
then-
Robin?
Hmm?
It's you're driving past. Oh, there's been an accident. What's happened there? Smash. New accident. The perpetual
normally what
accident machine.
They literally
basically-
have rubber necks.
No, it's because they kind of whip their head around like the.
In game, do they have rubber necks?
Some of them do now.
The Blues
Their
Brothers.
life
is that
is
them?
just going to find things to look at.
Can the Blues Brothers car be driving along the road somewhere, creating?
No.
For the paramedics and paralegals, these are para standers by. They're ready to be deployed with a moment's notice to be witnesses at scenes of accidents.
But on
It's terrible these days.
on that subject, as you kind of start approaching the kind of cone of destruction, you see kind of parachutes popping periodically as paramedics are jumping in to come and try and rescue people. They're brilliant when they get to the ground, but then they get their stretcher out and it's like, oh.
They've got jetpacks.
We are like 15 hours on now.
Mhm.
Why are paramedics coming in now?
Because they keep finding people in the rubble.
The further ones where the disc of, or the cross section of the cone was bigger, obviously that might be in a different district, but there are going to be, and you can.
Yeah. So there's kind of around the around Penn and Teller's, there isn't crime scene tape as such because there's not really any police, but there is kind of a sort of aura, and what you can see is kind of like a little sort of bug that's just sort of like zooming around the area really quick, going, stay away, no, go away, it's all official. I said official.
Nothing to see here.
Nothing to see here. Moving on.
Well, it's where we're going. Even.
It's about a block away from Penn.
Oh, okay.
So you head along to the house of the Geraint, and given that his name is George, it's kind of an old-fashioned sort of Georgian house, which seems a little bit out of place because it's next to something that looks an awful lot like a Blockbuster's, and on the other side a really high-end electronics. I say electronics, but a high-end kind of like goods store, and then there's a kind of Georgian house nestled in between them.
Is he curious by any chance?
He might be.
Is he in fact a chimp?
He is not in fact a chimp.
Aww.
Okay, he's a chimp.
In
now.
a house coat.
He's a chimp.
And the Georgian house is yellow.
No, he is a chimp, and his butler is the man with the yellow hat.
Yeah.
I don't know.
The
Curious
Curious
George.
George.
So the door is opened by dressed in full Georgian regalia with the double breasted thing and the
Yellow hat.
powdered wig with a yellow hat on top of it. Yes,
We're here to talk to George.
I'm afraid he's very busy.
It pertains to with information as to what happened last night.
Well, you and everybody else has information about last night. Apparently it was witches, or it was mage light, or it was a hate cyst, or it was a strange exploding cat. There've
We
been
were
several
there.
of
Have you
those.
got the what's it? Christopher?
Yeah, no, I was like, I've got. We were there, and we need to talk to him.
He takes the kind of letter of introduction. Oh my, I did not realise. Please, follow me. And
That
you,
goes no further.
Take it back.
I won't be able to take the letter back.
he leads you in, and it's kind of done up, sort of like turn of the century, not turn of the century, but it is, very Georgian. There's fancy carpets. There's a harpsichord playing somewhere in the background. He takes you upstairs to the office of the Geraint, and sat behind the desk there is a chimp in a periwig with a whitened face and beauty marks on him, and he sounds an awful lot like Hugh Laurie. Well, danged and blast, hello!
Curious George grew up and now he sounds like that. Puberty hits hard.
Well, don't just stand there all foppish. What is it that you've come to see for? Is it a lark? I do go so love a lark.
We have information regarding the incident that happened yesterday evening.
That was a terrible incident. Where are my socks? Do you know where the socks are? Are you the sock thieves? Have you come to confess your crime?
No, but we might know somebody that blew up part of your neighbourhood.
Oh, that.
The
Well, that has
socks-
rather taken the fun out of things, hasn't it?
We were in one of the local ale houses, and a demon, dastardly fellow, by the name of 19, if that's any kind of name, he turned all of the people in the pub into zombies. Mindless, slavering, well, Polish people.
Commoners?
Yes,
Oh,
worse. And they started to attack us. So, as is
did you
only-
give them what for?
Well, we certainly did. And we gave them, what, 5 and 6 and what, 7 and 8, 9,
And
10
100,000,000.
and yeah,
18.
several more.
And
Powers of the sun, by the sounds of it.
Well, that sounds delightful. Come in, sit down. We'll have some tea. Do you like tea?
Tea was fantastic.
Hmm.
Yeah, so we were wondering if there's anything that we could do to help rebuild the bits of the neighbourhood that got damaged.
Well, that is an interesting one.
I'm going to give you the letter because you've not seen it, but Dawn indeed.
Sorry, I have a man for this. An orangutan in kind of Georgian stuff comes in and looks very sort of put upon. Yes.
it's a librarian.
It's the librarian.
Takes the letter, reads it, and leans into George's ear and kind of whispers the message. Oh, ruddy top chap you are as well. Huzzah!
I'm pretty sure the letter just says, "They have a bunch of idiots. Go with it."
Pretty much.
You might have noticed that the person you're dealing with at the moment isn't exactly all there. He's a couple of brain cells short of a pair.
Well, he's also a sock short of a pair.
Socks? Why have you mentioned socks? That's rather suspicious. I never mentioned socks. What's happened about socks?
I want to look for the sock.
How do you know my socks are missing?
Because you told us.
I did?
Yes.
Oh. Well, bloody well get on it then.
Yes.
So we're going to help rebuild the neighbourhood, and we need to look for your socks.
Yes, socks are far more important.
So we'll look for your socks, and we'll help
Does
rebuild the
the
neighbourhood.
orangutan look like he might know a bit more what's going on and a little bit more in charge?
The orangutan looks very kind of put upon, and sort of like, don't hunt. Yes, well, very well, sir. Shall I see to the details? Oh, that would be ruddy marvellous. Do you like jam?
Only on scones.
Scones and jam. Fantastic. He pulls open a drawer, and this is definitely a drawer, and he pulls out some scones and jam, and he walks on. Hands out. Dollop of jam. Scone.
I'm good, thank you.
Are you sure? It's rather good jam. Jam?
I'm looking for your sock. I can't have jam right now. I'm
Actually
looking for your
tastes really
sock.
good.
Jam. Scone. Lovely. Well, he will see to all of it.
It's the Cornish lady.
I'm going to make a quick weave using sight and space to look for the
Jam
sock
first.
because I feel like he's quite distressed about this. And it's curious George grown up. I've got emotional investment.
It's not Curious George grown up. Everybody
Oh.
else around the table knows who this is.
Well, I don't.
I'm
Make-
kind of
make your-
mixing
make
the two.
Make your weave.
So I'm going to put a 5-point weave into sight and space.
You do need to watch Curious George, don't you?
Yeah, it's good.
Okay.
And do I put a...
There'll be, no, you wouldn't need to spend one because a level 5 spell would, level 5 spell would already have an enhancement dice. So it already comes with a red dice.
Oh yeah. So I'm saying, do I need to red dice? Well, it's a pair of wands.
Pair of wands is fine, that's all you need. The socks are in his sock drawer, or they are on his feet, or occasionally they are in his pockets. He hasn't lost his socks, he's just an idiot.
Found socks in your pocket.
Well, tally-ho! Jam for you!
Yay!
I've
But
just-
you pointed with
it's-
your
Dave-
mangled gun sword hand and he just stuck
The sock
jam all
thing
over
has
it.
just dawned on me.
What? The gun is jammed.
There's a whole thing to do with socks in Black and the Third.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm just saying, it's
And-
just dawned on me what you're doing. So,
George,
yeah.
Georgian house,
Yeah, I
The
know that.
waistcoats,
No, I know that.
sounding like you, Laurie.
No, I understand
And
all that bit,
the
but it was
orangutan is most disimpressed, sir. Would you come this way?
no, I got all of that bit, but it was the socks bit that then goes like.
The orangutan gestures you into a side room and you come in and he introduces himself. I'm terribly sorry about that. My name is Dr. Sayus.
Edmund Zaius?
Edmund Blackadder Zayus. And I offer you my sincerest contrafibrillations.
Relations.
What? It is a common word round our way. I'm afraid that Garrett is somewhat absent-minded of late, particularly with the issues of last night. I think he prefers not to engage with things that upset him.
Losing socks is quite stressful.
Is there a person sat somewhere in the house cuddling a turnip?
Sorry?
Is there someone sat in the house cuddling a turnip?
Killing a turnip?
Cuddling, or looking after a turnip?
No, there is a turnip cuddling a man.
Ah, yeah.
I sit down with the doctor
Mhm.
and sort of just sketch out to say that I believe that we've got talents or abilities that may be useful when it comes to rebuilding possibly not all of the neighbourhoods that were affected by this thing, but we're only concerned about this particular neighbourhood here. We have two weavers capable of putting together some formidable spell. Well, maybe not. You might not be able to build things with the way yours work, but from what I was looking at Astraios, but from what I'm aware of, Stonewall over there is got away with bricks and stone, so
And
physical
amazing
reconstruction and maker who can, I presume, put things together.
Wow, that is fantastic. He reaches into a cupboard and pulls out a kind of like musty, sort of like hand-drawn map of the area. And he says, we've had several makers in here this morning and they're trying to work out the best and quickest way to get everything set back to some semblance of normal. And he starts drawing some kind of like notes on the map. Now they think that if they can get into this spot here, and he marks something that was one of those kind of like dead zones in the middle of the area. If they can get into here and they can build themselves a sort of a tower or a locus point, then we've got some makers who think they can use that to kind of augment their abilities and kind of start putting things right. The problem is, they all suggest that that area is haunted and nobody wants to go in there.
We'll go.
We can clear that out for you.
We could deal with ghosts.
Yep.
I ain't afraid of no ghosts.
Buster makes me feel good.
Oh no! I've just realised. Those three are the scientists, and I'm Winston Zeddemore.
Winston is the everyman.
Yeah.
And we have Janine. She works at thingy.
Janine Melnitz from my staff. So he gives you the details. He kind of like gives you a copy of the map. And says, truth be told, I have no idea what's out there. It might all be old wives' tales, but nobody's ever wanted to go there before the incident, and after the incident, nobody wants to go there now. They even think that that's the reason, because although George kind of knows what's going on, Dr. Zayas hasn't been kept in the loop. So as far as he's concerned, it's an unexplained natural phenomenon.
Should we
explain to him?
yeah,
Because
I
he
think we
seems to be
should.
the one who's actually.
Orchestrating. And if their plans for building this tower in this dead zone rely on the fact that it's semi-originated there, they're wrong.
The plans don't rely on the fact that it
Whose
originated there.
idea
It's-
is the tower?
Does it come from these makers?
It's come from a conclave of makers
Oh, it's okay then.
that they
It
came
may or
up.
may not have been infiltrated by a demon.
Because towers and Roland make me uneasy.
I say tower. That's just a name. It's not a ziggurat or anything like that. It's just a kind of a platform or a dais, a couple of stories high, so that the makers can get there and they can do a combined weave that will sort the problem out.
That makes sense.
They tell me.
Yeah, that's cool.
We should do a tell him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's the one running things,
You-
really.
Deserve to know the origin of the effect.
Wiping jam.
Whopping jam off the burnt and mangled arm. Magical flux.
And the full story is given.
Yeah.
Dr. Zaius literally goes apeshit. He craps in his hand and throws it at you. Because of you, I have spent all bloody morning trying to put this right.
Oh wait, I've got to weave this.
How can you be crapping that much?
A lot of coffee.
Rage poop.
He was quite backed up beforehand that this is a relief of stress.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're just so I'm not
It doesn't have
completely
much.
covered in crap.
Tell you,
Joy in space.
Joy in space to do what?
They can feel less crap.
You're not allowed to do any more weaving at the moment.
no, stop.
You're banned.
So, just to recap, the current quandary that you find yourselves in is as a result of you weaving. Oh, are you going to do this?
This is the point where you go, no.
Look, have you got any drugs to give him?
I think he's deservedly angry. He's fine.
We're gonna go. We're gonna
he's-
help. We're
He's
gonna go.
calmed
We're
himself
gonna.
down. He starts wiping his hands on the front and just leaving smears.
Ew.
And then he notices and he goes, oh,
Right.
I think you should leave.
We leave.
Are you
Shoot sweet.
teleporting out?
No.
No, that's the cantrip for cleaning up, so he doesn't have to deal with this.
Oh, he
So
cleans the
when
room.
clap goes.
Bugger off.
Ooh. Ooh. Silver Sun ability. I'm going to reach up and 2 points. A simple, like solid, no machinery thing. It's a gramophone in this Dr. Zeus's office.
Mhm.
And is it a disc gramophone or is it a
Cylinder.
it's a cylinder gramophone? Okay. So I pull down a cylinder made of silver and say, this should work on that thing there. And he takes a look at it and he goes, best of Johnny Mathis.
Now, if you don't mind, I have an idiot to corral.
Yes.
Possibly two.
We've got it right.
No,
thank
we've
you.
got this one.
We've got this one.
So the
I need 3 counts instead of 1.
so the monkey doorman comes back and leads you back to the door, and you're back out in the street.
Monkey.
And I think at that point we're going to leave it there.
Yeah.
So, how do we think today's gone? Nobody else has been killed. Nothing
I
else
think it's
has
been
been
pretty
destroyed.
It's realising bit by bit just what a stupid thing you did.
Oh, we're putting everything back together.
We haven't started anything
Yeah,
yet.
we have.
Are you going to resurrect the thousands of dead?
No. But, you know, we're going to go kill some ghosts and make the area a bit nicer, so that's not too bad, right?
Yeah, but we're going to an area
And
that
no one's-
potentially could be full of the ghosts of the people you killed.
Yeah, but no one's actually blaming us at the moment, like...
Yet.
I think a few people are blaming you.
But
Everybody that knows you done it.
The interaction with Crystal Fire didn't go as badly as it could have done.
No, he agreed to help you.
The interaction with the Geralt didn't go as badly as it could have done. Okay, that's because he's a moron, but
I don't know, he gave us jam and scones. That's not bad, that's good.
he's an idiot. We get to have some kind of say in the design of the new bits of the neighbourhood. That's possibly going to be a good thing, because I believe that one of the issues in Hawke's neighbourhood was the fact that there'd been a new train station and people were 50-50 about it. What I'm thinking is possibly, did the building site of that new train station get taken out in the blast?
Did now.
Yes. Which then raises the question: oh,
But
no,
only, only one platform, because it had one platform too many. So now it's less intimidating, but still useful.
And 3/4.
It's 3/4.
don't try and table talk your way out of this.
But the alternative to him trying to table talk his way out of it is him trying to use more magic.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, we don't want that.
This is true. This is true.
So, yeah. But no, this is your recap, not mine, sorry.
Yeah, we've had quite a productive day.
I think it went a lot better than it could have done.
Mm-hmm. How do you feel? Not you, because you have murdered many innocents. But how do the rest of you feel about that, knowing that it wasn't just a you've mindlessly killed all of your mates?
I'm glad that they could prove that it was us seeing things and them seeing things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad that we have ways to move forward. I'm glad that Eliana's safe. I'm glad that Crystal Fire just seems to want to meet with her, and actually telling him is a bit of a weight off my mind rather than a
Definite joy for Stovall.
yeah.
I'm just back. Just killed all my friends.
You have more bonds to them than we did, didn't you?
So despair. I think I have despair.
Yes.
And there's despair. And I have one joy. I can't reach. Richard did he? How about Caliban?
I broke my own rule.
He did.
You're happy.
What?
You break the rule, but you're happy.
How do you feel you're getting along your kind of goals of being in a group that would have you? Because I think the events of last night shows that they'll definitely have you.
I have.
Hey!
But and the fact that we didn't question the 10, we just accepted it for what it was. It was very obvious what was going on. But we didn't.
And how do you think your kind of bond to protect Eliane is going now that you're kind of not giving her up to Crystal Fire, but you've let him know where she is, which you were very reluctant to do.
I can't remember my bonds at the moment, but I feel that part of it was about fostering her independence.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, the longer she's here, the more secure she feels, etc., etc. So it's all about that kind of thing. I don't think I have.
I believe that I'm still with these people because of circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
I still believe that they need protecting from themselves, if nothing else, which is something that I saw Roland as having done. He's not here, so I'm actually quite proud that I'm stepping up to that role, that position that he.
No, it goes in a different place.
So I think maybe it's the despair because you've broken your rule and that's left you uncomfortable, but also joy because you're.
I think not a joy. It's not that sort of tangible thing. I think the joining the organisation is one step across.
So there we are. How do you feel about wiping out more people than anybody since the war?
Well,
I
on
think
the,
suspicion he did worse during the war.
on the outside, I'm looking really happy.
Multi-kill.
But that's just. But that's just.
Unstoppable.
But that's just because I've snapped. Really, on the inside, I'm really depressed because I haven't killed that many people since the war.
So, yeah, more despair. I don't go for it. I have some despair. More despair.
But you know, you got to turn that frown upside down.
What, do you have a detachable head?
We did
Oh,
it with
yeah.
Liz recently. She was being a grump, so we turned her upside down, and she's like, "It works."
Really?
I didn't do that.
No, we did. I did.
What do you
I think I
think?
might have started that.
Hope that was all right, guys. That was a bit more of a
Oh,
Talky.
No,
talky episode than my normal ones, but can't all be slaughtering an entire town.
We need to wait.
Thomas is still playing.
Yeah.
We need to wait a bit for them to repopulate so we can.
You do notice that you've inadvertently got a new nickname. It's not being kind of like said to your face, and people are muttering it, not even realising that it's about a person. But they've started referring to this event as the Calamity.
Jay. Your nickname is Jay.
You know,
What?